Hi, my name is Roy Coughlan and welcome to the show. I've also got five podcasts: The Awakening Podcast, exposing fraud and corruption, but with solutions; the Crypto Podcast, on about all things blockchain, NFTs, crypto; the Meditation Podcast, talking about all different types of meditation, but there's also meditations there from 1 minute to 2 hours. And the other one's the Learn Polish Podcast. So if you're interested in learning Polish, you can do that. And the other one is Speaking with Roy Coughlan, and I just have guests from around the world talking about either public speaking or also about their book or just general life in general. And you'll find everything on bio.link/podcaster. I'm also a podcasting coach, and you see the QR code there, and it's also on my link as well. And if you're interested in actually going on some podcast shows, I'm helping people doing that. Or if you're interested in sponsorship, you can contact me. And I'd like to thank my sponsor, DanielPacker.com. He helps people with anxiety, stress, and addictions. He's got a 90% success rate, and you only pay if you're successful. So be sure to check him out, DanielPacker.com. I hope you enjoyed this week's show. Welcome to the Crypto Podcast. You'll find all our episodes on thecryptopodcast.org. My guest is a distinguished tech entrepreneur, a thought leader in AI, blockchain, and machine learning. He's also the host of Blockchain Brief podcast. With more than 20 years of experience in the tech sector, his expertise and contributions to emerging technologies are highly regarded. He currently serves as the CEO of VezTek, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, an emerging tech company, based in Los Angeles, specializing in software development and providing on-demand developers for cutting-edge technology projects. Please welcome Sani Abdul-Jabbar. Did I do it justice?
Yes, sir, you got it.
So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Roy. Glad to be here.
So I suppose before we delve into all the kind of crypto thing and everything, when I was doing research, I saw you've worked for some interesting companies like Warner Brothers, you've worked for banks, Toyota. You might just give us a kind of a run through of your kind of history.
Yeah, so I started my career after business school. I started in the corporate world for a few years, and there's a story of origin I would like to share. So one of my first jobs was actually process optimization, and process optimization is really a fancier way of saying cutting jobs. So I was a single guy making a lot of money, traveling around the planet. So it was a lot of fun doing that job. And in the middle of all that, I visited my grandmother at one point, and she asked, what do I do for a living? I explained to her that I do process optimization for companies. And when I do that, then, each person, each employee of the company can do the job of 3 people. And she, without skipping a beat, she asked me, so if one person can do the job of 3 people, what happens to the other 2? So I said, well, they'll let go. So her response was, oh, so you take away people's bread and butter. And that was a gut punch. So I said, love you too, Grandma. Finished my holidays, came back to work. That was 2006. At that point, I decided that I want to, instead of cutting jobs, killing jobs, I want to create jobs. I helped create jobs one way or the other. Tech was something I knew. So I went into the tech world. And since then, the company policy, or my personal sort of guiding principle, has been that whatever you do, it has to be something that creates jobs, that creates economic opportunities. Now I am struggling. I have a moral dilemma now in the wake of this whole AI evolution, which I will share with you in a little bit. But that's kind of where I started. And as for the corporate jobs, we did some interesting projects when Toyota was launched, when Prius, one of the first cars that could charge the battery while driving. So that was one of the first, those technologies that went mainstream. I was part of that project. And I also have a claim that I helped save Harry Potter from scammers who would steal movies data before they go in theaters. So that was at Warner Brothers. So we worked on that project, very interesting. Then we have a satellite entertainment company in the US called DirecTV. And they had problem that parts of the US, in the middle of the US, they had something called dark zones. And the idea of dark zones means that their satellite communication wasn't reaching there. So I became subject matter expert from the project management side and helped send a couple of satellites up in space. So way back, like 2008, I think. So there have been some really interesting projects. More recently, with blockchain and AI, there's a lot of investments in the fintech space, healthcare space. So just naturally, many of my projects have been in that space. So I'll stop at that, and we'll talk more about it later.
Oh, I suppose you might kind of give me your kind of blockchain crypto journey as well, how you kind of understood everything, how it all fared out for you.
My blockchain journey, like many people, my first introduction to blockchain was through Bitcoin. And that was when Bitcoin was not even $1 way back. And I was buying something from abroad where I didn't want my banking institution to know where I was buying that piece of software from. It was marketing purpose. And the vendor, he said, well, you have to pay me in Bitcoin. I was like, what is Bitcoin? So he explained to me, I bought some money, some Bitcoin exchange, I don't know, $50 or something, or $100. It wasn't a lot of money, but because the value of each Bitcoin was so small, even after using, that Bitcoin, I had some leftover. I didn't care about it, just left it there. And many, many, many years later, someone reminded me, oh, you had Bitcoin once upon a time. I was like, oh, let me find out. I had a nice surprise. We went on a holiday. So because the value had gone way up. I've been studying. So that was the first kind of introduction to blockchain technology. And I've always been more excited about the technology behind the crypto than crypto itself, at least in the earlier days, where it was more of a hype and not so much. Like, we kept looking for solutions or problems where we could apply this solution, crypto. And we did several projects where we brought crypto in. However, I've been feeling that blockchain was a solution looking for problem. And it wasn't until I started looking into this complete picture, where crypto is one piece of this Web3 emerging landscape, where you collect data from one side, then you store data somewhere. That's blockchain. Then you use crypto to incentivize different players in that equation. And then on the other end, you have some sort of data processing based on machine learning and AI. And then you come up with some actionable solutions, actionable answers, and then you have smart contracts and whatnot in the blockchain world that you use to automate processes. So when you look at it like this, the whole picture, then it makes a whole lot more sense to me than looking at crypto or blockchain or AI on its own. Right. I hope that answers your question.
No, absolutely. And like, it's something I usually ask people, because everyone's got a different answer. But who do you think created Bitcoin?
Oh, well, as you know, there are many stories. I don't know.
Fair enough, because I'm getting all different names. Everyone's got their
Yeah, I
own.
mean, I can tell you a few stories that I've heard. My personal sort of gut feeling is that it's not one person that created Bitcoin. It was sort of consortium or group of people that did it, but it's just a guess.
And with the regulation, then, how are you feeling on that? Do you think they should keep away from it, or is it badly needed?
Oh, I have been an advocate of regulation in the crypto and emerging tech in general. A few years ago, every time I would get on a stage at conferences and trade shows, and I would talk about a need for regulation, I would get booed. I would get a lot of criticism from the audience. It wasn't until 2022, I believe, I spoke at a conference here in LA, and I mentioned need for regulation in the crypto world. And the first time ever, there were more people supporting the idea, and there were fewer people who were saying, no, no regulation, because that hinders the evolution of technology. I have led several projects in the government sector. I can tell you, without proper regulation, government is not going to touch it, even for government's needs. I'm not talking about from the regulation perspective, but from government using this technology in its operations. I can tell you, big corporations aren't going to touch it because of liability issues. If you don't have legal framework, legal precedents, and regulation in place, there's no rules of engagement. Unless I have rules of engagement available to me, I'm not going to deal in this technology. And that's the mindset. People who oppose the idea of regulation, they are usually the ones who are more interested, who are more excited about the technology itself and less about the application. My position has always been that unless we can find the application, the use cases for a technology, it doesn't become mainstream. Now, when I talk about regulation, I'm not talking about blind, mindless regulation. We're talking about mindful regulation, something that doesn't hinder the evolution, but at the same time, it provides enough guardrails. In the blockchain world, regulation was seen more of as a, I would argue, almost as a belief system. You either for it or against it. But when we move into the next step, machine learning and AI, well, now regulation is not just a vitamin, it's a painkiller. Because if we don't put those guardrails in place, then we are creating technology for, first of all, again, people who are playing big game, corporations and governments, they're not going to touch the technology. And secondly, even if they do get involved with the technology, then or if they decide no regulation, then you have this just uncontrolled, mindless growth, and everyone is just experimenting with whatever. That does not create a helpful environment or a technical or technology landscape where we can keep moving forward at a nice pace and keep creating products and technologies that offer solutions to world's largest problems. So that's kind of is my position on the regulation side.
Excellent. So you're the CEO of VezTek, I believe. So you may tell me, what exactly does the company do?
So going back to Grandma's story, when Grandma said, right? So I came back and I said, well, let's find out how we can create economic opportunities. And that's where VezTek came into being. VezTek was so there's, in the tech world, there's this concept of garage startups that come out of your garage. Amazon is one of them, Microsoft, Apple, they all came out of someone's garage. VezTek came out of my dorm room, actually, business school dorm room. And a friend of mine and I, we kind of came up with this idea. He didn't continue with it, but I did. VezTek was created as an emerging technology company. Emerging technology means whatever is emerging at the time. Now, in the past, we used to get about 3 to 5 years before we had to pivot to the new emerging technology. And I'm talking about 2006, 7, 8 through 2015, roughly. Then that period, from 3 to 5 years period, it started shrinking. And COVID, you must have heard it from other sources as well. Now, COVID was a point where all rules kind of went sideways. And now, since the official end of COVID, we have the definition of emerging tech has changed, I would say, at least 2 to 3 times, depending who you ask. In my opinion, it has changed at least 3 times. Now, at VezTek, the idea was we're always going to do emerging tech. We do 2 things only. One is Roy has a great tech startup idea or a scale-up idea or a software idea, but he doesn't know how to do it. He brings the idea to us. We take consultant role, and we take that idea from that stage to deployment and support stage. So first thinking, conceptualizing, building, designing, implementing, supporting. That's one side. The other side is Roy's podcast company has grown and he has his own internal tech team, but emerging tech is rapidly changing. Roy wants to use emerging tech in his business, but he cannot afford to keep changing or keep hiring new people. It's just too complicated and too expensive. So we come in and we plug and play. We give you plug and play experts in those emerging technologies. So these people come in and they join forces with your internal team. So they're like on-demand embedded teammates, and they would work with your internal team and they would help bring emerging tech into your business, whatever that emerging tech might be. Now, this model is not so unique. There are many companies around the world offering this. We have a secret sauce, and the secret sauce is about 10 years ago, we created something called Emergence Convergence Framework. And the idea was, if emerging technology is changing so rapidly, how can I have some sort of warning, some sort of indication which way I should invest resources into acquiring talent, retooling people, building infrastructure, so that when new demand hits the market, we are ready to leverage that demand. So emergence convergence formula framework is a emerging technology forecasting model, essentially. Again, in the past, it used to give us about 24 months head start. Now it gives us about 12 months head start. But still, we are able to have people ready before demand hits the market. And that's why the moment you say, I want this new emerging tech that just became part of the mainstream conversations, we have people ready for you already, because we've been building those teams for the last 12 months at least. So that's kind of is our secret sauce. So that's what VezTek is.
No, excellent. So kind of with your experience, what are we to expect in the future?
In terms of technology evolution?
Yeah.
So I've been talking to many experts in the field, and had a meeting with Microsoft last week. Looked at several new products that are new frameworks and new technologies that will be launched within the next 6 months, and companies like Microsoft and others, they're working on it. Looks like for the next three-ish years roughly, AI will continue to evolve. What we call AI today, ChatGPT. Everyone talks about ChatGPT, but that's just one little sliver of the promise of this technology. That's machine learning, and so that's just a little part of it. But there's a whole lot more that needs to be done to really leverage this technology. There are some people who are arguing that in about 5 years, we will have general AI, artificial general intelligence. I don't know how I feel about that, but I believe that 3-ish years is AI. Beyond that, we are probably going more into 3D into metaverse. I don't think that word's stuck, so we're moving, but that's about 3 years down the road for specialized applications. What we call NFTs and cryptos, now they're called digital assets, digital collectibles, and that will become more mainstream over the next 3 to 5 years. But again, we have to look for actual use cases, not just, Roy has some Bitcoin and Sani has some Bitcoin and demand and supply is controlling the price. That doesn't work. It's not sustainable. So those are a few technologies that I'm keeping an eye on for the next 3 to 5 years.
And I remember hearing about Watson before. Like Watson was kind of the know-all of everything. I didn't hear no more about that. Was that kind of the first kind of AI that was kind of open to the public, and what was the kind of story behind that?
Watson is a great product. I reviewed Watson in Toronto in 2018, and things that it could do that were amazing. I remember 2 examples, Watson-based solutions that we reviewed. One was the value of a player, sports player, right? So basketball is huge in the US, football, American football, that's huge in the US, not soccer, football.
Well, maybe it's got better now with Messi coming to the soccer might start picking up.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm talking about, American football. And then, those sportsmen, they get traded across teams and their salaries and their, all that. So that all is based on their forecasted performance for the next season. Watson was able to do that in real time. Like there's a match going on somewhere. Watson is getting live stream data and we're looking at it. And the value of different players is moving up and down in real time. And if you wanted to trade those players or try to, snatch them from another team and bring them in your team, you could do that in real time. You could negotiate pricing in real time because you had all that valuation available to you in real time during a match. That was mind-boggling. The other one was in the healthcare space, where they could look at huge amounts of data and then determine, or rather recognize very like rare types of diseases, and then talk about custom medicine for each patient. That was kind of new at that point, but now it's becoming more mainstream, where custom tailored medicine based on a specific patient, not for the masses. That's becoming more common now, but back then, a few years ago, that was. So Watson can do those kind of things. That's why it was exciting. But compared to what we have today, Watson it left a lot to desire for. And I think Watson is still being used in specialized use cases, but I'm not privy to that information.
Like, I mean, with the healthcare, because most of the time they're pushing all the kind of medicines and stuff like that, big pharma. But the reality is there's so many natural things. And if it was to incorporate that, it depends on who's programming it as well, what information you're going to get. But the reality is, like, there's plants, there's herbs, there's everything that can cure a load of different things. And by using AI, like an advanced Watson system, I mean, you're going to seriously help humanity instead of like, if we look at all the cancers, all the diseases, Alzheimer's, everything is, on the increase, despite all the fundraising that they're getting. It's not working.
It's not. And fundraising is not working because the way those funds were being used, like, you didn't have enough pattern detection and enough data to support your decision making. So you were investing that money whatever was popular, whatever treatment was popular, you would invest money into that treatment to cure cancer, for example. What machine learning is? So AI, a question I'm often asked, well, I have this company, I want to bring AI into my company, where do I start? Or in any industry, where do we start? What solution can you provide us? And my response is, I don't know. I'm not expert in your industry, but what I can tell you is that if you have massive amounts of data available, more the merrier, more data the better, then we can do something with it. So the first two industries that became the largest consumers, the front runners in AI adoption, or even blockchain adoption before that, were fintech and healthcare. And why? Because fintech has huge amounts of data available, and there's enough incentive to leverage that data for fraud prevention, for automation, for estimations, for forecasting, probability calculations, depending on which sector of the fintech you're involved in. Then healthcare, you have huge amounts of data available because both of these industries are highly regulated. So we are required to collect data. We are required to protect data and keep it clean. So now you have large amounts of data available, and then there is enough incentive. Like you mentioned, there's a lot of fundraising for different diseases. So that money can be attracted. Investors who are interested in healthcare solutions. World population is aging, especially in the Western world. And they have money, right? So there's incentive to build solutions for them. Right. So that's why fintech and healthcare is the front runners when it comes to emerging tech, Web3 emerging tech adoption. And the third one is entertainment, by the way. Again, a lot of people, they're paying for entertainment, and the budgets are big. So that wherever you see heavy regulation and lots of data and large enough profit margins, you will see AI evolving in those industries.
Excellent. And like, I've seen where AI lies, and also people that can kind of trick it into pretend you're somebody else, and then it can overrule and start doing kind of nasty stuff when it's supposed to block it. Like, has that evolved as well, that they're stopping this kind of thing where, like, because the way, from what I can see, is like a lot of it is kind of like a Google search or whatever, and it's giving you information that's out there, not necessarily the truth. And unfortunately, some people, they read it and they think, or it gives them an answer, and this is that's gospel. And is there ways of actually navigating to prevent that in the future?
There are two things. One is so this behavior that you just described, I call them Google doctors and Google experts of everything. And you can find plenty of them on social media. They just see some, not even a full article. They would just read, something in search results, just a little, blurb on the top, and they become expert all of a sudden in that field. And there's no debating with them because they don't have enough argument. They don't have enough information. So they're just going to take a stance. They're going to stick with it, whether they're, pro or against. You probably saw that in the debate around COVID vaccines, right? mRNA vaccines and other things like that. Now, that behavior is not new, and that behavior is likely to continue in the AI world as well. What's going to happen now? In the past, when you ask Google how to create a podcast, it will give you at least a list of URLs and you go through URLs and you at least you get some level of diverse opinion and diverse guidance, and you come up with your own sort of path forward. In AI, you ask a question, it's going to give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 steps, nothing else. There's no diversity of opinion. It's just that 10 steps. And if you don't have the background, you're just going to think those 10 steps are the right answer to your question. And that creates a problem. Now, people like me have already started thinking, like if somebody looks for, top emerging tech company in the world or top emerging tech company in the US, how do I bring my company as an answer to that question when you ask that question to ChatGPT or some other tool like that? And there's already work being done where we can actually sort of manipulate those results. So it gives more power. And this kind of, now I'm going on the tangent. It takes us into the conversation of whether AI is going to steal our jobs, or is it going to give someone unfair advantage? Absolutely, yes. So, people like you and me who are interested in this tech, and we are looking for tools that can be brought into our respective businesses, and so that we can leverage that emerging tech, we're going to be the winners of that paradigm shift. And then people who are still taking the position of no AI or AI bad, or I'm just not going to touch it, or humans are superior, they're not going to be able to survive in this new paradigm. So is something that's a sort of my mantra recently. Regardless, you love it, hate it, whatever your position on the evolution of AI, machine learning, and these kind of other Web3 technologies, at least learn, at least observe, at least be aware of what's going on, because there's no way this genie can be put back in the bottle. Not going to happen.
Definitely. And because I've listened to a few of your episodes on your podcast, and one you were talking about, or else you were on, it was either your own one or you were on with somebody else, and it was about the books, and the books written by AI. And one of the things that I saw when the Maui fires, there was books being written and released as it was still happening. And then the next day there was like 4 books, and you're going, right, nobody actually, because it's very hard to actually get it approved and everything. It's a slow process with Amazon. And it's like, from what I hear from you is like, it's not going to the authors shouldn't be faring because it hasn't got that ability yet that the writing is up to the same level of a decent author.
Yes. But then we go into this argument whether if I write a book on topic X, whatever the topic is, if I can provide valuable information, because I'm not even the expert in that topic, but I write a book because I know how to use AI and how to quickly have a book written and publish it, and it gives you, the reader, reasonable amount of information and reasonably accurate information. Does it matter if it came from my brain or from the AI? I'm not taking any side.
No, exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, because like say I bought one recently on Reddit, and the guy didn't really explain it, but I know that if I had typed into AI and spent the same amount of time, I would have got a way better answer on how to understand Reddit and how to be promoting. So yeah, you're right. I mean, as a neutral, yeah, it's really what's the benefit of the book that I'm reading.
Yeah. So if you're receiving that benefit, does it matter? I don't know. I don't have the answer. I met with a gentleman last week, and he is very well known. I wouldn't mention his name. He is about to publish 3 books simultaneously, like one after the other, pretty much, before this December. 3 book launches back to back. And this man is extremely busy. He's a public figure. I know he doesn't have time to write. And I said, did you use Ghostwriter? He's like, no, I didn't use Ghostwriter. And he's very open about it. In the past, he has written books with ghostwriters. He said, no, I didn't use Ghostwriter. I used a prompt writer, a prompt engineer. I said, so you're openly on a public forum with about 200 people in front of us. We were on stage. And I said, you're in front of 200 people. You're telling me that you used prompt engineer to write your next 3 books, and they're going to be launched one after the other. He's like, yeah. And I said, then are you still the subject matter expert if these books aren't even coming out of your brain? He's like, no, I'm still the subject matter expert. I said, how? He said, because the idea, the framework, the story that I want to tell, that came from me. And I told the prompt engineer the end goal. I told him that I want the readers to leave with this thought or this notion, this idea, whatever. And here are the steps that I want to take the reader from page 1 to the last page of the book so that they arrive at that conclusion. Now, how do you, what do you fill in those pages to achieve that? That came from the prompt engineer. And for those who don't know what prompt engineer means, it simply means people who at an advanced level, they know how to use tools like ChatGPT, how to give instructions at a more advanced level, beyond just saying, write me a book. So way beyond that. That's a prompt engineer. So in the past, you used to have ghostwriters helping you write a book. Now you have prompt engineers helping you write a book. If ideas are still coming from you, then the question remains, are you still the subject matter expert, or is it the prompt engineer who is producing the book, and your involvement is kind of secondary, not really primary? Something to think about.
I think it's the same with even the ghostwriters. It's kind of similar because, I mean, there's sometimes the ghostwriter spends so much time with the person that they're getting it and as much words, and it's kind of, you would think he wrote it, but other times, because especially if you follow somebody and you see the book, you're going, that's not him. That's just somebody just wrote the book for him based on what they're looking at. And you can,
exactly.
Yeah. So there was another thing that I saw you talking about, and I find it interesting, especially since I've had a lot of court cases. I've had over 100 court cases, and you were saying that in India they started using it in the courts. Yeah, the AI.
I think you're referring to a case, not India, New York.
New York.
New York. That's the story I think that you're referring to. And I might have mentioned in India and a few other countries as well where automation is being used. But this story I found interesting. There was a court case not too long ago in New York. This was earlier this year, I believe. And an attorney, who was representing the defendant, he went to the court. He presented a whole court case full of legal arguments and precedents and everything. And if you look at it on the surface, no brainer, they were going to win. And when the judge started listening to the precedents and the arguments, he's like, those precedents, I never heard of those. Those precedents didn't exist. So previous, you know how the legal system works, like, some judge decided at one point in time that becomes precedents for the future. Those things didn't exist. We call it AI hallucination, where AI just comes up with its own, whatever, it makes up things. So can it be used in the legal space, practice? Absolutely. We actually built a product many years ago for the Arizona court system, which was basically an advanced level, like quite advanced level platform to be used during a hearing in a courtroom, where attorneys and other involved, they could pull up very quickly relevant information, relevant precedences and everything, all real data from the body of legal knowledge. Well, here we are just making up precedences. So now that goes back to your earlier question. In this case, do we need an attorney? Do we need a subject matter expert? And the answer is absolutely yes, at least for the time being. Without an attorney who actually knows that if AI is suggesting something, is it even real or not? You can't do that. You can't use it in the courtroom without a subject matter expert who is supervising at least of the writing process of a book, authoring process of a book. You cannot publish a book with confidence because you wouldn't know for sure if the content is even real or not, or is it just hallucination of AI making up things. So that is there room? Absolutely. Is AI rapidly sort of being adopted in the legal legal field? Absolutely. I know several projects who are focused on AI use in the legal field, and I mean contract writing and those kind of things, they have been pretty much automated now. Like recently, my attorney provided me a partnership agreement that generally he would have taken at least several days to complete, and this time, over a weekend, he sent it to me. And I was like, what? That's like 20-some page document, like you created it over a weekend, not even during the weekday. He's like, yeah, it's all, the AI magic. I was like, okay. But at least I know that he's reading that document before sending it to me. So it's my faith in the attorney, not in the AI, that I'm going to use this document, knowing that it is an output of an AI engine.
And the opposite side of that then is there's so much incompetence with a lot of the attorneys. So it would actually might help a person because they could get themselves locked up or whatever, pay a fine when they shouldn't be. So they might stand to benefit from that. There was another thing I heard you talking about, Spotify NFTs. You may let us know about that.
So Spotify, so this was, I think, last year when several companies were looking into using digital collectibles, digital assets. That's what we call them. We don't call them NFTs anymore. So they were looking into different use cases of NFT. Spotify had an idea, if I remember correctly, that if we have Spotify NFTs, they give you certain privileges in terms of, more higher level membership, for example, and discounts and invitations to specific shows and early access to new music, new songs, etc. So it was like a membership type concept that was created there. Along the same lines, there's a fragrance maker out of Paris. I want to say Chanel. I'm not 100% sure. One of them, the big ones. They started similar concept where they launched NFT and they said, well, if you own this NFT, we're going to send you samples and we're going to the trial size bottles every few months, kind of subscription type thing. And you'll get early access to new fragrances when they come to market. You get invited to special events, things like that. So all this idea, NFT idea was, and there are several other examples like that where the use was almost creating walled gardens or closed communities or special access based on NFTs, based on that ownership. So you become part of a club in a way. So that was the idea there.
So your podcast, it's blockchain.
It didn't work.
What's that? Sorry.
I was just going to say, again, this at that point we had a technology, we had a solution, we were looking for problems. So all of these things were kind of tests of different use cases. There aren't very many of these projects that have that are still active or active in any prominent way. But there were tests, and every emerging technology goes through that process.
Yeah. No, I see, even with a lot of guests coming on, and the different companies, is you think, oh, this sounds good, and then it's gone 6 months later. It's just we're kind of still in the Wild West, I think, some parts of this. So your podcast, Blockchain Brief. So I've listened to some of the episodes, very good, thoroughly enjoyed it. But is that hosted on Substack?
It was initially. No, I think we only host actually the audio part of. Actually, that's not true. We host. Well, okay. My team actually handles all the technical side of it, so I am not sure. I think we use Substack only to host the audio file, and then it kind of goes to different directories: Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Google, all of them. So I think Substack is just sort of a launch pad, I guess, for all other directories.
Okay, no, because it seemed like just
you're the expert of that field. Do you
exactly?
That's
why I've never. That's the first time I've actually come across it, because I'd always check the podcast. I checked how many episodes and when you started and all that, and I saw like his feed was going like to Substack, and I've never seen that before. There's so many of them out there. It's like a car, and there's so many different brands, but it was like one that So just like, are you going to continue with the podcast, or what's your plan?
Well, we are currently taking a short break because it just takes a lot of time, and I'm just too busy. The idea when we launched this podcast was it's not going to be any long form podcast, or we are not trying to accumulate many episodes. The idea was every week I wanted to give a briefing of what's going on in the blockchain industry, emerging tech industry, really, hence Blockchain Brief. So the idea was 15 minutes is all I ask. In 15 minutes, it's a I'm going to give you tons of information on what happened during the previous week, so you're up to date. And the next week, same thing. It takes a lot of time to fit 1 week worth of evolution of technology into 15 minutes. I can write 1 hour worth of content easily, but 15 minutes worth of content is really difficult.
But you were getting a lot of information in 15 minutes. And I know myself, like when you're preparing a pod, that's not something that you just pull out of your head. Like there's a lot of preparation needed to actually have that. So I can understand.
We have to keep an eye on what's going on in the market, in the industry. We have to keep an eye on the evolution of the technology. We have to, then you have to differentiate between what's real information and what's just hype, because every time when there's a emerging technology, there's a lot of hype around it, and people talk about a lot of things that may or may not be coming from a good place, a good intent. So you have to kind of differentiate between those projects you don't want to support, you don't want to amplify, projects that may be questionable. I've seen, we call it rug pull, where, all of a sudden one day project disappears. I've seen quite a few of those. So we have to be very careful in, what we talk about, what we include in our weekly brief.
Like with, crypto, when you're buying it, no problem. When you're selling it, it's a lot harder. There's a lot of information. So they're like KYC, know your customer. Like, because a lot of the people in the crypto world, they're nomads. They're traveling around the place. So they don't have, their humble abode, let's say, and they don't have bills in their name. Like, what's the best way of navigating that? I know you can go to the ATM machines and everything, but like, is there a need for that when you have to go through so much to get your passport and everything? Like, what's the difference? Like, I can't understand it, because when you're going to the bank or whatever, because the reason I'm asking you is because you've worked in a bank. You go to the bank, they want your passport, and they want, so it's like, why I know it's really probably down to tax. That's why they, it's all down to kind of declarations. But is there ways around it that, or do you believe that should be used, that people should have to have a utility bill?
Well, look, so these are emerging technologies, and around that, the culture and the support and the environment and policies and expectation, everything is emerging, so it's like the rising tide and all that. What I've seen people doing is they would create a physical persona and a physical means non-nomad persona and a nomad persona. So non-nomad persona is they have a mailbox somewhere, they have some address somewhere, and now there are mailing services where they would collect your mail, physical mail, and they would scan it and send it to you via email wherever you are. So I've seen people doing that. I head up another company as well in the energy sector, where our customers are all over the world, and they're traveling, and they're not, and their passports are from somewhere, and they live somewhere, and all that kind of stuff. When we look at KYC, we really look at their banking and their identity. Identity comes from their passports, banking comes from their bank. No matter where you are, whatever business you are in, you need banking, access to banking system. So we kind of rely on that instead of creating our own KYC, where you have to send me, your house address and your dog's name and everything else. We don't do that, right? We are moving rapidly into, before COVID, you couldn't open a bank account without a physical address. Now you can open bank accounts where you give them a mailing address, which can be a mailbox. And for physical address, they're like, yeah, wherever you're currently living, we need an address. And several banks, they're quite lenient about it because they understand what's going on. And as I mentioned earlier, fintech and banking is one of the early adopters of these emerging technologies. So they understand that they're already making it just available to digital nomads, either creating that non-nomad persona or working with institutions that have set up processes for, which are designed for this new era where people don't necessarily are tied to physical places.
Okay. And just finally, like, a lot of people in this space, they're kind of on Twitter, then there's Discord and everything. What do you think is the best kind of platform for, I suppose, the crypto blockchain world?
For community management, you mean?
Yeah.
For communities, I've seen Discord is quite popular. I've seen Slack is popular. Yeah, those are really, and Telegram and other applications are also being used. Any application that keeps history of your previous conversation. So For example, if you're using WhatsApp and you join a group in WhatsApp today, you can't see anything prior to today that was posted in that WhatsApp group. But things like Telegram, things like Discord gives you that history. So those kind of tools are more popular.
And like, I mean, I've had a few business kind of, like, because I'm serial entrepreneur, I've always had a lot of different businesses, and one guy, oh, we'll do everything on WhatsApp. And for me, like before, if you deleted something, it was only for you, but now, so we could have a contract, we could be doing different stuff, and then if I see, hey, this is going pear-shaped, somebody can go in and delete something. So I don't find that the WhatsApp, and plus it's supposed to be encrypted. And recently I was writing to somebody and they were telling me they were getting a new car or whatever, and now I'm just on Instagram and Facebook, cars. So I mean, we know it's it's owned by Zuckerberg, like, but like there's no encryption. Is there any that we can feel safe with? I mean, I've heard a Signal, but
yeah, I mean, they all claim that there is some sort of encryption. WhatsApp also claims that they're end-to-end encrypted. I believe that every encryption can be broken. You just need enough incentive. Yeah.
Perfect. Listen, thoroughly enjoyed the conversations, and you might let people know how they can get in contact with you.
Oh, so the best way to reach me is via LinkedIn, and it's the very easy, linkedin.com/Sani, SANI. That's the easiest way to reach me.
Okay, perfect. I'll make sure I put the link, both in the audio and the video. Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure, Roy. Thank you.
So that's all for the Crypto Podcast. You'll find all our episodes on thecryptopodcast.org. Until next week, take care. So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Be sure to give us a thumbs up, 5-star rating, and share with your friends. And you'll find all my shows with the QR code or bio.link/podcaster, as well as my podcast coaching. And I'd like to thank my sponsor, DanielPacker.com, helping people with anxiety, stress, and addictions. He's got a 90% success rate, and you only pay if you're successful. Also, if you'd like to go on a podcasting tour, I can help you do that. And if you're interested in sponsorship, you can contact me on my bio.link/podcaster. Until next week, take care.